ready. This meeting is being recorded. Okay, and then as we are freshly waiting to start 2021, we have another unprecedented event causing more uncertainty and lots of other emotions. And so we have all of that, and then we also have all of the regular life events and situations to worry about and to manage and to navigate. And so tonight is about talking about how we as parents, as caregivers, as caring adults in the lives of youth that we care about, how we can make an impact and how we can make a positive impact and build resilience, build these life skills. And here's the catch. This is also about you as an individual, as an adult, and how much you matter, who you are, and where you come from. Jenny had alluded to parent footprint, just to tell you what conceptually the idea of the parent footprint is that we all are leaving footprints on our children and grandchildren, and we need to choose and be aware of the footprints that we're leaving. And that starts with us being intentional about our own lives. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. So we're going to start with a parenting quiz, caretaking quiz. So let's look at these choices and think which one describes you. Stressed, overwhelmed, worried about your child now, worried about your child's future, or all of the above. Yes, 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 and yes. And these are common things for caring parents and caretakers to think about because it is not easy to do this job. And I want to talk a little bit about what we know from the science, the parenting science. So we know that teaching is better than parenting. We know that kids have trouble learning when they're scared or angry because the parts of their brains that are activated are the emotional parts of the brain as opposed to their frontal lobe, their thinking part of the brain. We know that parents can't teach effectively when they're not calm, when they're emotional, when they're upset. And also there's a disclaimer, you need to do your best not to have self-judgment during this talk because we're all doing the best we can. And those of us who do this for a living still do all of these things that we don't want to do and don't want to say what our parents said and all of this stuff. So please be kind to yourself. We're talking about best practices here. Kids learn from what we do, period. We don't get to have them just watch us and listen to us when we have our peak parenting and person moments. They watch all the time, they hear all the time. And how many of you are aware that your kids don't hear anything that you want them to hear, and they hear everything that you don't plan on them hearing? It's just phenomenal. The other thing that the science tells us is that love and connection is foundational for safety, for security, for feeling of self-worth in our kids. So in my years of doing this work and as of parenting, I used to have all brown hair. It's now gray and white in many places. So I've been doing this for a while. So these are the observations. We parents want what is best for our children. And I want to tell you, I didn't say this on the outset, I speak to you not only as a psychologist, but also as a parent of 3. So I am in the trenches, continue to be in the trenches with you all. Parents don't want their kids to experience pain and suffering, right? And we want our kids to be successful and happy. Now, in the terms of what parents want, what's best for their kids, we have to think about what drives our parenting behavior. The college scandal that happened not that long ago, those parents that did things that we couldn't imagine that they would do, that their kids couldn't imagine that they would do, they did it out of love and desire for their kids to be happy and successful, right? So the intentions were there, but we have to be aware of what we're doing so we can assess if what we're doing is going to be helpful for our children. But to do that, we have to be aware and know that our own childhood always informs our parenting beliefs. What we think about what we want for our kids comes from where we come from, in opposition to what we've got, what we received, in the middle, or what we received because we liked it. And that our own childhoods always impact then our parenting behavior. So our childhood impacts what we believe about parenting and impacts what we do as parents, always. I like this saying, it's something for us to consider as we do our job, our loving job as parents. Treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them become what they are capable of being. I think so often in our world that has gotten, in many ways, seemingly more dangerous. We're hovering more, we have more rules, we have more expectations. I think a lot of the times we unintentionally constrict our kids and give them messages that perhaps that they're not capable of doing this yet. They're not able to. And what I like, going back to this old saying, is if we can vision who we want our kids to become and we can treat them as if they are, they grow into who they're capable of becoming. So when we think about this footprint, this parent footprint that we're always impacting, and that our parenting beliefs inform our parenting behavior, we need to ask ourselves, what is important to us for our children? And there are a number of possibilities, as you see some here on the screen. Like and you don't just have one, we often have many, but do we know really what they are? So do we prioritize grades, advanced performance in an activity or academics? Do we prioritize because it's important? We want our children to take risks. We want them to learn to persevere. We want them to be independent, cope with adversity, be successful, be happy. I contend it's important, as you're going to be hopefully doing a lot of thinking tonight and hopefully after tonight, is about what do you want for your children? Because if you can articulate it, if you become aware of it, you can engage in behavior that supports it. You can then also identify where your behavior and maybe your beliefs are not supporting what you are wanting for your children as we build these skills. So we talked about love. Love is foundational. Kids need our unconditional love. They need it to feel safe. They need it to love themselves. However, there's this belief that love conquers all and that love is enough, and that would be wonderful. But unfortunately, it's not true, which is why we have to take inventory, because as I said with the college scandal, for example, those parents loved their kids, and they did something that was not, besides not being legal, was not helpful for their kids' growth and development and confidence in themselves. We also know that parents that abuse their children love their children, and many of those parents were abused themselves. And so we have to be aware and we have to be intentional so that we can not only love our kids, but act in ways that supports their positive growth and development. And with this is that awareness of what matters to me as a parent. What am I trying to cultivate in my child? What do I want for them now? What do I want for them in the future? And are my beliefs and actions aligned with these parenting goals? With this awareness, comes knowing what we are bringing into the room, what our energy is. And we have a whole range of emotion as humans, right? We've talked about love. Plenty of situations where we can feel angry, we can feel sad and depressed, and we can be worrisome and fearful. All of that comes into a room, whether we're interacting with our children or not. If you've had a tough day, if work was hard, if you just had a fight with a friend or a spouse, if something happened when you were driving, our kids sense that. And they particularly sense that emotion, particularly the ones that are sensitive, when we are interacting with them. You know, your sensitive kids that know something is wrong, even when you're either trying to hide it or you don't even know that you are showing that something is wrong. These kids are in tune to us. And again, the adults that can be aware of what they're bringing into the room with their children and what they're bringing into their interactions with their kids can be more purposeful and intentional about what they're trying to accomplish in the interaction. So again, you're hearing awareness, awareness, awareness. It's not just about how we focus on our kids to develop the skills. It's who we are as the instrument and the beings through the relationship to develop these skills of coping and resilience in our children. So when we think about life and we think about, okay, we don't want our kids to struggle. We don't want our kids to suffer. We want our kids to have a good life. Well, we do that. We want that for lots of reasons. We might want that because we struggled. We want that because we love them. We want that because it's hard for us to see our kids in pain. But the bottom line is that we have to be real about life and prepare our kids for life, and particularly for kids for life beyond us, which is like, there are struggles. Now, even though we can't even anticipate some of the struggles that we have been in as a community, as a culture, as a group, there have always been struggles. And they're going to continue to be struggles. Some that we know, some that we can't anticipate. So we know there are struggles, we know life is stressful, and we know there will always be adversity. Always. So it's critical that we focus on preparing our kids for this life, for this world. And that I'm arguing in that long list of what's important to you, we add coping, problem solving, and ultimately resilience, the ability to bounce back, right? Recover when there's been a setback and rise above difficult circumstances, right? Like if we think of like a primary parenting goal for us with our kids, how to build this muscle. And then we need to think about when something's happening at school, something's happening with a friend, something happened with a coach. Do we step in, and under what circumstances? What's the lesson we want the child to experience? It might not be fair. Is it time for us to step in and stop the unfairness? Or is it time for a child to experience unfairness? Because there's going to be several opportunities for unfairness in school, in work, in friendship, and in relationship. And I'm not weighing in on what to do. It's about thinking about, what do I do before I just rush in and place that call, write that email, step in and intervene. So why resilience? Well, we know that resilient people ultimately see a challenge as an opportunity. Someone puts up a roadblock. How am I going to get beyond this? Someone hears a no. All right, I'm going to keep going. I'll show you, right? This is what resilience is. Resilient people seek solutions, right? They don't just take no. They don't just say, oh, I just can't do this. They think and think and think. And think about your kids who are the constant negotiators. And I know how exhausting it is to have a constant negotiator. I'm arguing that is sign of resilience. Now, you might say, how come they only do it with me and they don't do it with other people? I would say we need to bridge that so they can use those skills with others to advocate for themselves. And we know that resilient people, they ultimately are more successful because they push through their limits and they continue to learn from their mistakes and they develop this confidence. So how do we know when we need to build resiliency, and how do we know when resiliency has reached its limits? Well, we're seeing a lot of resiliency reaching its limits through the pandemic from people of all ages, right? It's been hard. It's gone on for a very long time. It's continuing. We're seeing some signs of hope. I know the numbers are spiking, but vaccines are getting out there, but it's been hard. And so when we're looking at, okay, when we have a kid who is suffering and struggling and needing some help and needing support, there's the physical symptoms, headaches, stomach aches, trouble sleeping. There's that fatigue that you see. Now there's disinterest, previously interested in activities, now not interested. Grades drop. This is not invested in school. Like we are in a time of tremendous academic adversity, situational adversity, where we've always had kids who, when they're overwhelmed and resiliency reaches limits, grades dropping, pulling away from school. We have larger numbers that with virtual schooling and the challenges, the tremendous challenges of learning online and teachers teaching online and parents being involved to the degree that they can when they're not working, tremendous challenges. Sadness, anger, and then, more concerning behavior like substance abuse, use, addiction, and then the ultimate of self-harm. And when these things are happening, we need to seek professional help for ourselves, for our kids. And we know that we have to look at the circumstances, how much are circumstances combined with internal resources, and how do we get in there and again, try to increase resilience while decreasing the overwhelm. And when we talk about resiliency reaching its limits, something that I always think of is when the external demands exceed one's internal resources, right? And so that can take a lot of form. I mean, it's a relative term. Some people have tremendous internal resources. However, you can still pile up enough external demands for it to overwhelm one's internal coping skills. We have to bring perfectionism into the conversation here, because perfectionism is something that we see a lot of. I was talking to many of your wonderful therapists, both in SELPA and through Mentis in the community. And we're talking about how much perfectionism they're seeing and how much perfectionism does shut people down. When we think of perfectionism, we need to think of fear of failure. And with this fear of failure, it's like nothing is enough. There's a constant fear that you're not going to be good enough. It's not going to go well. It's going to be terrible and awful if it doesn't. It's this fear that builds. And with perfectionism, it's you're hunkering down. You're only doing what you know. Often you're afraid to take a risk. You can't hear constructive feedback because now it's personal that you did something wrong. And really, with the perfectionistic profile, you're often, that fear of failure overrides a potential experience of joy. And one thing to think about, to leave you with here, is the difference between perfectionism and striving for excellence. So we say with perfectionists, so a lot of people say, well, there's positive perfectionism. Well, that's a debate in the field. To simplify it is, perfectionism usually comes with a cost. The performance comes with a cost, comes with fear, comes with pain. Afraid to make a mistake, afraid to fail. Striving for excellence is about making mistakes and taking risks on your way to being your best version of yourself or producing your best project or outcome. So we want to help our perfectionists try to loosen up that thinking and go more for striving for excellence, where that it's okay to make a mistake. And sometimes the best homework we can do with perfectionists is practice making mistakes and seeing that it's still okay, you're still wonderful, and people still love you and care about you. You are so much more than what you produce. Okay, we're going to go through the 7 C's of resilience, and this is from Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg, who he has many books, he has many online programs and resources. He's back east. One of his main books is Building Resilience in Children and Teens, and he is a physician, pediatrician, who is a world-renowned expert on resilience, and he came up with the 7 C's. So here they are: competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. Now, what he has found through his work and his research, that each builds on the other. So ideally, we're starting at the bottom and working our way up. However, if we can tap into any of the C's, we are building resilience. So as we go through this, I want you to think about with your, oh yeah, okay, yeah, we do that with my child. Okay, my child has that. Oh, okay, wait, I think we can use a little more work on this C. Okay, this is about, again, becoming aware, taking inventory. So competence, this is the first one. It's like, think about the baby that learns to pick up the Cheerio, walk, child that dresses themselves, and that smile on their face because now they're becoming competent. They can handle a situation. You're building their competence, you're building their skills. And on the way, you're guiding them to think safely and wisely as they're gaining their competence. But the competence is, I can do it. Like, I have the ability to do it. I can feed myself. I can put myself to bed. I can get off the computer without you telling me, right? I don't need a reminder, like fill in the blank. So we want our kids to feel competent, that they can impact the environment because they have skills. And that competence then leads to confidence, right? If I know that I can do something, now I have a belief in my ability. And if am able to do A, B, and C, well, you know what? I probably can learn how to do D, E, and F, right? So we're building momentum. It comes from trusting ourselves, right? So we have this confidence, which leads to confidence. And when there's confidence, we trust ourselves. And then when they have these successes, then they realize, okay, this is going to be hard, but I can do it. I can do it. I was working with a college student today who has a lot of perfectionism, and we're working on resilience, and had a particularly tough COVID semester last semester. And he was talking about how much he stresses, and he's pre-med. He's talking about how much he stresses with school. And what we finally got to is his knowing that he always pulls it off and does well. It might be quite painful and stressful, but he always pulls it off. And he realized, you know what? I don't give myself credit for that. I need to stop thinking about that I'm going to fail and start thinking about how am I going to handle the process, because I know that I'm going to pull it off. And that's a great awareness to have when one is 19 or 20. But gosh, how great will it be if we can help our kids have it when they're 10 or 8 or 6. Connection. So connection is key. So what we know is that kids who are connected to their community, to their friends, to their school, which we'll talk about more momentarily, they feel secure. They get a sense of values. And those values, when they're connected to others, their family, their community, their school, their church, their synagogue, their scouts, their groups, it prevents self-destructive behaviors because they have others that they're a part of with a shared community and shared support. Then they feel like, okay, I've got people. I can cope. I can get through this. I'm not alone. And the other thing is that when kids are part of communities and help others, then they learn that there are others there to help them. And an important task is to help a child learn to ask for help, right? Because we know the perfectionist, I have to do it on my own or I'm a failure. It's embarrassing. To ask for help, and again, having this connection helps them learn, well, I helped them, so I guess they can help me. Now, just a quick but important point about school. So we know that kids are connected to school really thrive and develop well. There's lots of research to support this. This has been incredibly challenging for all parties during COVID, right? How to be connected to school through a screen, right? And again, this is situational. This is not blame. This is like, so just to know that our resiliency has been chipped away at in many ways, or challenged through COVID and the pandemic, many ways. And school is a huge way it has been challenged. Because when kids can interact with adults who care about them, and they know who care about them, they learn that they matter, and they learn that learning can be pleasurable. And learning being pleasurable is challenging in the current format. And yet everyone is doing the best they can. And we are going to be back to in-person schooling. We just don't know exactly when. Okay, now character. So character is really what gives us that sense of what's right and wrong, right? And when you have a sense of character, you can rely on that character to get through a difficult time. What are you about? What do you stand for? And I put this quote on the end because this is an experience that I had, and I'd say my mid-20s. And I was going through a particular time where the external circumstances exceeded my internal resources. I didn't have that language back then, but that's what summed it up. And I was really struggling, and I was driving. I was towards the end of graduate school, I believe. I was driving in the rain. It was, just a perfect, dreary, miserable day. I was struggling, and I'm at a stoplight, and the car in front of me has a bumper sticker that says, "If you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing." I immediately thought, okay, what do I stand for? And my first non-resilient, struggling thought was, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I stand for anymore. And I started to have this mini little, like anxiety, existential crisis in the car. Not that I needed anything else to worry about, which was, I don't even know what I stand for. I must stand for nothing. And I thought about that over and over and over the next 24 hours. And it helped me get back to part of my core about who I was and what I cared about and what I stood for, despite having a difficult time. And it helped really build resilience in that time in my life. So I just want to share that with you. It's like, even when we are struggling, we still have our core character, our values, who we are, where we came from, and what's important to us. And that's why as parents, we want to really not only model that, but teach that to our kids. And reflect that to them about who they are and what you see in them. Wow, you are a good friend. Wow, you are loyal. You are hardworking. You know what? You don't give up. Like, this is part of you. And these are the things that they can rely on when they get in a tough situation. Contribution, this relates to community in the sense that you matter. You contribute to this neighborhood, this family, this school, this church, this synagogue. You matter. Right? And that because you matter, we're better off. And you have a sense of purpose. So this contribution, the showing kids like that anyway, whether it's scouts, whether it's they're doing the dishes, whether they make dinner, whether they're taking out, like, they're contributing to the community because they matter. This builds resilience. Then there's coping. We're talking about coping throughout tonight. If they can cope, if they develop skills, which we're going to talk about some of these skills, they're better prepared to deal with life's challenges. And if we can give them a range of skills, they'll be prepared for more and more curveballs, more and more stressors, and be more likely to engage in these positive coping behaviors than some of the other negative behaviors that teens and young adults and adults engage in when they're overwhelmed and feeling bad. And finally, the final C is control. So we need to help kids realize that while they can't control everything that happens, they do have some control in their life. And what can they do about a current situation? That they have some control in the situation, that they can advocate for themselves, that they can try to change what's happening. They can leave a friendship that's not healthy. They can stop being a part of an online group where they're being bullied, right? We want to know that you do have some control. And when you have control, you have more efficacy, you have more confidence in yourself in the situation and less victimization. We need them to know that they can have some control into what happens to them. This is all building resilience. So there is no test later, but here are the C's. They all sound similar, but just think about any of these C's and cultivating any of these C's in your children. You are cultivating resilience. We went from the 7 C's to the 4 S's. So the 4 S's, this is from a great book, recent book by Dr. Dan Siegel and Dr. Tina Bryson. They are the brain-based parenting gurus. They have several good books. This book is The Power of Showing Up. And it's really important to know, if we just can try to simplify 7 C's, that's a lot. Here's 4 things that leads to safety and security and love of self and love of other. Our job is to keep our children safe and secure. Safe and secure, that they're going to be okay. We're not going to harm them, and they are okay in the world. This starts from a young age and it continues. It's our job to help them soothe when they're overwhelmed by emotion or circumstance. It's not our job to teach them, and although we do more than we want, yell at them in a moment that they're dysregulated. We first need to help them calm down so we can help them harness the resources to deal with the situation. Telling kids they matter, showing them love, they need to be seen for who they are. They need to be seen for who they are, not just who we want them to be. And if they feel safe, and if they feel soothed, and if they feel seen, they become secure in who they are and who they are in the world. And if we can do this or do a piece of this, we are building resilience in them because they feel that they matter, they are accepted for who they are, and they can handle situations in life. Grit. So Angela Lee Duckworth came up with the notion of grit and has one of the most watched TED Talks of all time. And I just wanted to throw this in there because it's a term, another term for resilience, which is basically, grit is diligence, perseverance, it's hard work. It's a commitment to getting better. And what we know about grit and the research on grit is that most of the time, if not, the vast majority of the time, if not all, hard work beats raw intelligence. It's like the people who work hard and don't give up, the resilient people who succeed. And that these people are the ones that become lifelong resilient people. They have lifelong grit because they overcome adversity. They don't give up. These are the things, again, I'm suggesting we focus on more than some of the other things that we tend to focus on in our culture that is very heavy on performance and high GPAs, just talking globally, Bay Area and beyond. And it's like, these are, we want to raise, as Challenge Success out of Stanford says, is we want to raise good, solid adults. And our report card for that is not at every semester, it's who this child becomes as they become an adult. So with that, also out of Stanford, mindset, Carol Dweck, her seminal research on mindset, which I know many people are aware of. She talked about there's basically 2 types of mindsets. And there's those with the fixed mindset and those with the growth-oriented mindset. The fixed-oriented mindset is the one that tends to feel like I'm as smart, I was born as smart as I am, and being smart means I do well and perform well without effort. It's all about the trophy. It's all about the grade. Whereas the growth-oriented mindset is, well, my brain is a muscle, and the more I work at it, the smarter I get. And it's about the effort I put in and the journey. And it is tons of years of decades of research. One interesting study, she gave questionnaires to students in college, and I can't remember if it was Stanford or Berkeley. It'd be funny if the Stanford person did it to the Berkeley engineering students. And the students were sorted between growth-oriented and fixed-oriented mindsets. They didn't know. And they were all given really hard tests that they were sure to fail. And then they were asked, do you want to see the test answers of someone who did better than you or worse than you? And the fixed-oriented folks who care about the grade said, well, we want to see people who did worse than us because they just wanted to feel better. Where the growth-oriented people are like, oh gosh, I want to see what I did wrong. I want to learn. And so a lot of the times we as parents and as educators and as coaches are unintentionally promoting fixed-oriented mindsets where we're like, oh, 100% again, great job. Oh, what'd you get? What's your grade? What's your score? And we're not focusing on really, how did it go? How did you feel? Well, how much effort did you put into that, right? And once I was trained in this, and I think my oldest at the time, I think my oldest, the oldest, she's almost 21 now. So I want to say this experience happened to her when she was maybe the freshman in high school, and I was really getting into this work. And she was kind of hitting her stride, and she was getting more serious about school than she had. And she did well the first semester. In the second semester, she got way more social. Oh, actually, sorry, I'm fast forwarding. This is middle school. Okay, this is earlier. So she got way more social, and then all of a sudden, she wasn't spending as much time on her schoolwork. And, I was making a conscious choice. Like, I don't want to talk about grades. I want to talk about like how much effort is she putting in. And I'm also going to consciously be aware of how much am I actually talking about her grades and what am I promoting. So she did well the first semester. She gets to the second semester, and she's really proud of herself. She gets to the second semester, and she shows me her grades when her report card comes. And they're fine. They weren't like her first semester. And so I took a deep breath, tried to get insightful and aware, take my own temperature. And I said, so, okay. She's like, well, I said, yeah. She's like, well, what do you think? And I said, well, what do you think? And she said, well, they're not as good as the first semester. And I said, yeah, they don't look to be as good as the first semester. And she said, well, and I said, so what are you going to do next time? And she said, duh, I'm going to spend more time studying. And I said, okay, sounds like a plan. And that whole exchange would have gone really different if I was just being a regular parent. Like a regular parent tells the answers, right? A regular parent is like, well, what do you expect? You were spending so much more time on your phone than you were with your friends. And we talked about this several times. Why are you surprised by this? And these, you could do a lot better than that. And don't you know how much this counts for college? And I know this doesn't count for college yet, but the abilities and the practicing that you're doing now is crucial for your high school, right? We've all heard this. I think we have to really think about what is our tape, what is our narrative, and again, what are we trying to cultivate in our kids? So what do mindsets predict? So the desire to learn versus looking smart, right? Fixed-oriented people want to look smart and get good grades and get trophies, and growth-oriented people really want to learn. The power of ability over effort, right? Like, what is natural ability with a fixed-oriented, or your effort? How much can you grow? And then why we're talking about this is resiliency, right? If you have a growth-oriented mindset, those folks tend to be more resilient because they're problem solving, they're growing and they're learning. And fixed-oriented mindset folks tend to have less resiliency, more perfectionistic thinking, more achievement-oriented thinking. And I told this to the group yesterday. Like, I am a perfectionist in recovery. And when it comes to mindset, what I'll say is, I remember as I started, because I started to work on this, and as someone who loves to be outdoors and loves to hike, My marker was how many years I spent hiking in the beautiful outdoors, just trying to get to the top and trying to get my way down, right? And not enjoying the journey. And then the transition to having more of a growth-oriented mindset is enjoying the journey, not caring about the time, not caring about how fast it goes, but enjoying the process. And I can tell you that it is a far more enjoyable experience being in that frame of mind than a fixed oriented frame of mind, not just in nature, but in life. So when we're building a growth oriented mindset, here's what we need to think about: prioritizing and focusing on their effort, commenting on their effort, not the outcome. Another example, which some people might disagree with, I remember when one of our kids had learned to ski and was now a proficient skier. And after they had learned to ski, at the end of the day, Dad, I didn't fall once. Now, again, they had learned how to ski. Same with snowboarding. I remember same thing. And so my response was, in this framework, I wonder if you're pushing yourself or you're just kind of doing what you already know. And this is not someone who's a big turbo skiing family. I'm just talking about the whole idea of how do we respond? Oh, great, sweetie, you didn't fall again. Well, we know lots of people who might not fall might stay on the bunny run and might not push themselves because they tend to be more scared and more perfectionistic. So again, thinking about, are we focusing on effort or just the outcome? Are we focusing on persistent to a task or just you need to master this? Are we focusing on the process or just getting to the end? And with this, we need to help them problem solve and stay engaged in an activity even when it's hard. And we have a generation of kids that seem to have a less developed disappointment and frustration tolerance muscle, that it's just like giving up easy. It's just too frustrating. And with all of this, we're building resilience. So I want to talk to you about a few more concepts that relate to this. So this is the Yes Brain, which is also one of Dr. Dan Siegel and Tina Bryson's books. And just to show just terminology here, the difference between a yes brain and a no brain, right? So the yes brain is thinking, is curious, is not surprising, resilient, is compassionate, is insightful, is open-minded, is problem solves and thinks about morality. We're not saying that the yes brain has a 4.0 or that the yes brain is on the gold soccer team, right? The no brain, which we'll talk about less resilient, is reactive, worries, really stubborn. Stubborn can actually be good though with that tenacity, is highly competitive to a place that it's like personal, feels threatened, anxious, has trouble coping, and it has less understanding of others. So, right, we need to think about what are we trying again to cultivate in our kids to be successful, resilient people. And they argue in their book, which these are like the four main concepts that the book is divided by, is we need to help our kids with balance, to be regulated. And this goes back to this brain-based parenting. When they're having trouble regulating, we have to help them regulate until they can do it themselves. We need to teach them to be resilient, right? This is what we're talking about tonight. To have the resources to get through a situation. Be insightful. You know how we're talking about parents need to be aware of themselves. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? We need to help our kids become insightful as well, tune into themselves, develop that metacognition to think about their thinking. And then to have empathy, right? And the empathy does come when we think back of the 7 C's. You know, if you're part of community, you develop empathy. You're part of something. And if we think of the 4 S's, if you feel safe and you feel secure and you're seen, you develop empathy for others because someone has shown empathy to you. Okay, I think the last book, Thrivers, this one isn't out yet. This is kind of coming out in March, and I had the privilege of interviewing Dr. Michelle Borba, who is a world-renowned speaker on this topic and others on my podcast. So that'll be out in a few months. And she's done a ton of work on what is the difference between a thriver and a non-thriver, a child who thrives. And you can see how many similar concepts are here from what we're talking about tonight, right? Self-confidence, that's one of the 7 C's, empathy, That's one of the yes brain. Self-control. We talked about self-control. Having integrity, moral code, right? What do you stand for? 7 C's. Curious, part of a yes brain. Having perseverance, that's that grit, right? Not giving up. And then optimism, right? I like this one. So we haven't heard this word yet. Optimism, like being positive. We're going to talk a little bit more about gratitude and how to be hopeful. Like we can get through this. I don't see this as doom and gloom. There's got to be a way, right? How do we develop a thriver? Another cool name for a resilient child. So I like to talk about the forest or the trees for us as parents, and also how we want to help our children grow. So the forest. Do we focus on the forest, which is the big picture of the situation, or do we focus on a tree? And you know what? Sometimes we're going to want to focus on a tree, and sometimes we're going to want to focus on a forest. And the whole point is about being intentional about what we're focusing on. So here's an example. Getting out the door in the morning when we had to get out the door to get to school on time, or get to soccer practice, or to finish homework. So the tree is that task, and the reminding and the coaxing and the yelling, and we just got to do this, and how many times I have to tell you, why is this so hard? And it's just getting the task done. That's the tree. Sometimes we need to do the tree. Focus on the tree. But the forest is, what am I trying to cultivate in my child? And so if my child's always late for school, when they were going to school, and when they're going to go back to school, do you always have to be in a place to yell and scream and have that terrible morning interaction? I had plenty of those when our kids were young. Or do maybe they need to learn what it's like to have a consequence from the school, which might be missing recess, which might be detention, which might be getting talked to by a teacher. And you know, sometimes you have to communicate with the school and the teacher, but it's like, what is the goal here? Bedtime. Bedtimes are often hard depending on your child. They don't want to go to bed. They want to stay up. They want to talk. They want to read. They want to be on their screens. If you're having a moment with your child and it's bedtime and they've always said, can you read to me? And they said, 5 more pages, and you're just tired. It's a choice. Do you shut it down there and have a potential meltdown? Or do you prioritize the relationship and the interaction and the love? No right or wrong. Think about the forest or the trees in terms of, what are you trying to cultivate in this moment? Are you trying to cultivate resilience during the math homework with the meltdown, which means, hey, we're just going to get through this. I'm going to sit with you. You can do this. Or are you just going to help them get through it and help them finish it because you just want to get the homework done and you're sick of dealing with it? Both are realistic situations. It's, do we think about it, and then how do we act on what our goal is in that moment? I mentioned screens. This is a whole talk of itself, as you all know. Are we living, like, screens were a problem before the pandemic, and screens are now a bigger problem, and also the ways that we are sustained and connected to life. So I was talking to a client today who said, screens were a problem before, and now screens are more of a problem. And, I just want you to know, like, this is what's going on. And we do know, though, that we need to try to help our kids manage screens and do it in an age-appropriate way. Because when they go off and they're living on their own in college, or they're living off not in college, they have to deal with screens, just like they have to learn to deal with tobacco and vaping and alcohol and all these things that are out there. We have to try to both put limits on it, like we would do for all of those things, but we also have to teach them skills as well and work collaboratively with them. Because we know, though, if there's too much screens, it depletes kids, and that's where the resilience can reach its limits. caused with lack of sleep, irritability, trouble focusing. Social media has tremendous negative impact on when there's social bullying going on, virtual bullying. And we know from a screen perspective, it's a social media that can often be responsible for anxiety and depression. So it's something just to know when we're talking about our health plan and our resiliency plan, we have to be aware of screens. And we have to be aware of sleep. So I also want to refer you to the podcast if you want to hear a great 40-minute talk. Dr. Valerie Crabtree is a sleep expert with St. Jude's at the Research Center. And just sleep is so critical. And we know, particularly before the pandemic, our teens were just not getting enough sleep. Screens has something to do with it. They're staying up late. The ones that are overachievers, high achievers, they're involved in too many things, AP classes, high performance activities. They just don't have enough time. And we really want to get those, as much as possible, those 10 hours of sleep for elementary kids, school kids. Try to get, 8 to 10 for teenagers. If you can get 8, you're doing a good job. And something that Dr. Crabtree was talking about was sleep pressure for teens. And the sleep pressure is when your brain and body is actually ready to sleep. And she said for many teens, it's really hard before 11. Like it just is. And so if it is, she was talking about with her kids, her teenagers, is working with them. Okay, how much sleep do you need? What are your activities and homework? And when do you have to get up in the morning? And how do we back this out so you can fit everything in? Again, like working together to teach this skill. And I know our middle, who's a freshman in college, who is not a big sleeper, more of he's an artist. So like he creates when he creates. It's been fun to watch him become more aware of the need for sleep, the impact of sleep, and to start planning for it in between projects. Okay, are you ready? We're going to go through 10 steps to cultivating resilience for you as parents, but of course for your child as well. Because what are we? We are grown-up children. We are the people we are wanting our kids to grow up like in the ways that we want them to and not in the ways that we don't. So, self-awareness, right? We've been talking about self-awareness. So we need to check in with ourselves. We need to check in with ourselves, take our emotional temperature, ask ourselves how we are feeling. We need to know, are we doing all right? Or no, not feeling off. I'm feeling off. I'm not feeling good. And with that is, what are we showing our kids? Now, you're human and you're gonna show them emotion. It's about being aware of the emotion to know, are they seeing what's okay? Or are you in a place where you need a break, you need help, you need some resources, you need to take a time out, which is fine to model that for your kids. And seek that help and support if you need it. This is a really tough time, right? Just being a parent is tough. It's tougher in this context during the pandemic. Self-regulate. You've heard this before. A way to regulate when we're upset, when our emotion is going strong, is to ask ourselves, what is impacting us? What am I thinking right now? Is it true what I'm thinking that's causing me to be sad? What's causing me to worry? What's causing me to be angry? Can I change my perspective about this? This is coping skills. This is resiliency. Can I make it a little bit more rational? Do I need to take a break and come back to be a little more rational? Do I need to take a little nap if you can do that, right? How many of us feel better after we've slept a little bit? And how do we get ourselves to breathe? Big belly breathing. To breathe through a situation. This is how we regulate. We regulate by checking in with our mind and our thoughts that are producing many of our emotions. We see how we can alter the situation internally and then breathe through it while we're developing some skills, some resources to deal with the situation. When we're dealing with stress and anxiety, we need to gather information. This is what we're also, right? We're helping to help our kids with this. When they're upset, when they're overwhelmed, hey, let's figure this out. Let's understand what the assignment is. Let's understand what they're expecting from you. Let's understand what you're thinking about this situation. Now, when we're gathering information, and this is also when we think about what has been going on in the news, whether it was the election or whether it was racial injustice, police brutality, name it, the attack on the Capitol, COVID, we need to manage the amount of information that we are consuming, because if we consume too much social media, we don't feel good. Who loves seeing everyone have a better life than them? We all know that it's mostly not real, but who does that pick up? And who is just exuberant and filled up from watching several hours of bad news? We need to manage the information. That is a coping skill. That is building resilience. And we need to stay appraised of what's going on, but we also need to have some distance. I historically have been someone who's always stayed away from the news, always couldn't stand it. I have to say that my coping through everything that's been going on in the last few months has been the opposite, which is not always good. So I'm owning that. But I remember as an adult not watching the news, and my parents, who grew up on the news and always had the news on, would say, aren't you afraid that you're going to miss something important? And I said, I honestly can tell you, I have not missed one important event that has occurred. It always gets to me. I always learn the most important things. So you just have to know what your comfort level as a parent and be aware of what you have on, so what your kids are seeing, and also what you're talking about. And I'm having a flash now with the news. I was living in Napa and working in Napa during 9/11, and the clients, the kids were getting traumatized by watching the planes go into the towers over and over and over again all day long on the news, right? And it was just sort of our first awareness as adults that we really need to manage, because news started to become that kind of news instead of just nighttime 6 o'clock, 5:30 news. Acceptance. Let's take a deep breath. In the mindful Buddhist way, we need to do our best to accept the circumstances, accept the situation. If we resist, we are in pain. As the Dalai Lama says, the greatest sufferings of human suffering is when we either want something to be different than it is or to never change, because both of those things are impossible. And harmony comes with accepting what comes to us, right? If we can be the river and flow in the river. And that is easy to say and hard to do. But when we resist, we have negative emotions. It causes human suffering. And we have had a new normal for a long time now. And it's important that we do our best to accept the circumstances so we can problem solve with them, as opposed to resist them and resent them, because it only brings us down, and it is anti-resiliency behavior. What is in our control? So the Dalai Lama says something like this: if you're worrying and there's something you can do about it, do something about it and stop worrying. If you're worrying and there's nothing you can do about it, stop worrying. There's nothing you can do about it. Right? Also, simply said, hard to do, but this is resiliency, right? What can I change? What can I change? I was working with a couple a few days ago, and the wife said, okay, I've been living first it was going to be 3 weeks, and then it was going to be 3 months, and then it was going to be once that. And she said, this isn't going to change. This isn't going to change all that soon. And she has 4 young children. She's like, I need a new way of living with what is going on. So we talked about, okay, what can we change? Right? So we don't have date nights anymore. I don't get childcare. And it's like, so we're problem solving what you can control and what you can't, and then making a plan to switch up the things, self-care, right? Exercise, date date time, having friends come over, like what can you control, right? And then separate that and make your list about the things that you can't control, because this goes back to, remember, control of the 7 C's. What can I do about my life? And we have to do our best to let go of the things that we cannot control, because there's nothing we can do about it. Problem solving, right? We've been talking about this all night. Like, use our great thinking brain. Help our kids use their great thinking brain. We have kids that they have these great thinking brains. When they get in situations that overwhelm them, their emotional brain takes over and they're not using their thinking brain. Help them regulate, then help them problem solve. What can we do differently? What can we do the same? What do we need to change? You know, as it relates to the pandemic, like, what do we need to do differently with our kids? How can we be creative? And are there any new opportunities with this unprecedented home time? There are people, believe it or not, you might be some of them, there are people who like being home. There are people who like not going to school, and there are people who like not going to work. And there are some people who are like, I hope this part of our life stays. And there's plenty of people that don't. But we have to, again, take inventory and be creative, and then find what can we do differently, and what's working and what's not. Again, this is taking control of a situation and being resilient. I mentioned self-care. Critical, guys, critical that you have something for you some time of day, no matter how short it is, right? We have to take care of our mental health, our psychological health, our physical health. We have to. And our kids watch it. Like, we need to model that for them. If we're on a computer all day long, maybe get a standing desk. Maybe take your breaks, right? We have to, even in the face of being home way too much, what is our routine? Do we connect with people? Do we go for a walk? My thing is jogging. Like, I jog for my mental health, and I need to jog at basically similar times, same times each week. And that's what keeps me grounded. I do not feel the same if I have not gotten my sleep, and if I do not exercise the way I need to exercise. And you know, reading, journaling, like just getting whatever you need to do that fills you up. And I know it's harder with parents of young kids. And so again, I'm talking, can you share with a parent, with friends in your pod, that you just get a little time and give each other a break? We have to stay connected. We absolutely have to stay connected. And that's where, here's technology, right? You got to do it. Like grandparents, friend, like people away. It's like, this is what keeps us connected. Look at each other, keep screens on, right? There's so many screens off moments in our jobs and kids in our school. We need those mirror neurons to connect, to know that we're part of something. Staying present is huge for battling anxiety, worry, depression, and increasing resilience. Like, we need to remember that we have to come back down to this present moment and not live in the future. It always takes us, the worry always takes us to what if this doesn't end? What if the vaccines are not as effective? What if we never go back to normal? Like all these what ifs. We need to stay present right now. We'll deal with that later, right? We have to be aware of this our internal resource, our thinking, the what ifs. All of our thoughts that start with what if, those are usually negative. Quoting the Dalai Lama again, he talks about those of us who live in the past tend to be depressed because the past has already happened. There's nothing we can do about it. And those of us who live in the future tend to be anxious because it hasn't happened yet. There's nothing we can do about it. So we have to get present focus. So when we get pulled out, pull yourself back in, but we need that self-awareness in order to self-regulate, to stay present. Gratitude. So gratitude is huge. Research shows that having gratitude increases well-being, health and well-being. Like, what are we grateful for? Think about that as you start your day. Ask your child, do it at the dinner table. What is one thing you're grateful for today? Right? Early on, this was so funny. We were in the midst of the shutdown, and everything was closed, and everyone's working at home for 3 months. And I was on a run, and my wife texted me, I'm going to this favorite bakery place of ours. She said, do you want avocado toast? And I'm laughing because I was so grateful for avocado toast, like something that I just took for granted after we were making our own food for months. And, it was just like, wow, I take so much for granted. And so what are we grateful for? And being aware of that, and then to focus on what we do have during these times instead of what we don't have, which is very easy for us to do. And again, the gratitude helps us stay present. So as we are winding down here, what do we need to do for our kids? We need to help them develop strategies to address problems. We need to teach them to have coping skills. We need to model for them how to do this, since they're always watching us. And we need to constantly let them know they're seen and that they matter. That builds resilience. And when we think of these stress reduction plans, it's like, and how do we, build resiliency? Okay, there's a problem. How am I gonna deal with it? Okay, this is stressful. Can I avoid it? Can I let this thing go? Am I or my child using too many screens or social media? Do we need to check that box? Am I exercising? How am I eating? Am I sleeping? And what is my release? What is where I can process? Am I talking? Am I exercising? Am I crying? Am I laughing? Am I journaling? Am I doing yoga? Am I meditating? Like one thing helps build resilience. So we parents we like to do, parenting is a verb, right? So we like to parent and do parenting. And sometimes the best thing we need to do is get out of their way and let them experience life, even though we're talking about doing a lot. Like sometimes we need to ask ourselves, is this something I need to let them deal with? The other thing is we like to talk and we like to teach. Like we've talked about a lot of how we're going to do that, how we're going to model it, but sometimes listening and saying, is the best thing we can do. And I'm guessing there's some Kelly Corrigan fans out there. She has great books and is a great author and now has a podcast. One of her latest books is called Tell Me More. Actually, I think the name of her podcast. And, she talks about what she's learned to say to her teenagers is, tell me more, right? Not ask the question that is usually the conversation stopper. You want it to keep coming. And when it usually comes? When you're in a car and you're not looking at each other, or very much at night when you want them to go to bed and you're totally exhausted and either want to go to bed or want some alone time. And that's when you got to dig deep often and be like, let them talk, let them get it out. And how do we listen in a non-judgmental way and not say something that's going to shut this conversation down? And to remember that nothing is as important as them seeing how we are in life, right? And that's the onus on us to be that person. So, no surprise to you, we are talking about parenting with awareness and intention. That is what this presentation, this is what this has been about tonight. And in terms of review, we want to manage our emotional reaction. We want to ask ourselves, what is our parenting goal in this moment? Is it a forest or is it a tree? Am I focused on the relationship or getting this math worksheet done? What are the different ways I can reach my parenting goal? How can I respond in a way that is aligned with what I'm intending to cultivate in my child? And then do what we do at work. We look at something we've done and like, did this work? Okay, what worked? What didn't work? What do I need to do differently? We need to do that with parenting as well. So I ask you, back to these big questions from the beginning, what do you want for your children? What's important? What do you want to focus on? How are you going to get there? What are going to be your parenting strategies? What are you going to cultivate? What are you going to focus on? You know you're going to do it with purpose and intention, being mindful, being present, being regulated as much as possible while still being human. And finally, remember, when we act in resilient ways, we teach it to our children. They need to see us handle things rationally and calmly to the best we can. We don't have to have all of the answers. We don't have the answers. Tell them we don't have the answers. Tell them we're still learning. Tell them we make mistakes. Remember that resilient people turn obstacles into opportunities, and we have obstacles every day that we can work on with our kids to practice turning them into opportunities. We need to accept our situation the best we can, find solutions, and model gratitude while we face this uncertainty. Ultimately, do your very, very best to be that person you want your child to become. And remember that we will get through this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dan. That was incredible. It's going to take a while for me, I know, to process it all. I'm glad we get to share your recording on our website. And I put that in our chat. We will have this recording up on the mentisnapa.org website for 2 weeks for everybody to view. We have a few questions, if it's okay. We have a few more minutes. I can ask questions that were asked in the chat. The first one is, what can I do if my son is a perfectionist? He keeps saying that he does everything better for his brothers, friends, even if he's doing homework and writing wrong, he gets frustrated and doesn't want to do homework anymore. I need urgent help. I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't know how to make him like school. So it's just that perfectionism. It sounds to me like it's debilitating.
Yeah, so a few things. One is, I think, especially during this time, COVID time, I would suggest not having a goal of liking school. That's a high goal right now. I would say we want to just like get through this right now. We want to get through this. When I have to say though, I didn't understand the first part of the question, which I think is key, about related to friends.
It says,
do friends maybe feels friends and brother or sister do better than?
He does everything better for his brother's friends, even if he's doing homework and writing wrong, he gets frustrated. I'm not quite sure. Let's see here.
I can still chip away at this. So what I would say is, here's what I recommend. So perfectionistic people don't know they're perfectionists most of the time. They don't know that it's a thing. And the first thing I think is important is to actually talk about what perfectionistic thinking is. And if you happen to be a parent who also is perfectionistic, or there's another parent who is, that is also helpful to tell a family story in the sense like, hey, you know what? You kind of got this from me. I feel this way a lot of times too, and I have to work really hard at it. And this is what it does to me. And I want to help you figure out how we can loosen the grips of the perfectionistic thinking on you, because it makes you feel bad about yourself. And it makes you feel that you need to perform at a level which is unrealistic. And this is going to sound, I don't know what it's going to sound, but it's like, you want to, with schoolwork for a perfectionist, we want to help them with the teacher just turn something in. And the goal for anti-perfectionism is to turn in something that's not good, so they'll know it's going to be fine, but they actually turn something in. Because a lot of times the perfectionists are just not turning anything in. Those artists, right, are like, you see the famous works once they're dead and it was in a shed because they don't want anyone to see it because of their perfectionism. So I would say talk about what perfectionism is, link it to someone in the family if that's appropriate, and then maybe work as it relates to school with the teacher to come up with a way so that the student can hear it from the teacher, which is different than the parent. Hey, I just want you to turn something in and I don't even care what it looks like. I want you to just do half of them, right? So this is about anti-perfectionism, to see that it's going to be okay. And again, this is something to chip away at, and often counseling can be helpful when it's just really gripping.
Okay, I have another question. What did you mean by practice making mistakes?
Oh, do something wrong. This is awesome. Do something wrong. First of all, parents, model doing something wrong. Talk about what you did wrong during the day. Talk about what you did wrong at work. Talk about when you made a mistake and everyone laughed at you. And then with a perfectionist with school, have them do their math problems wrong. Tell the teacher that this is going to happen. Have them spell incorrectly when they're good spellers. Have them paint outside the lines. You name it. Make any kind of mistake, because in the perfectionist mind, this is the fear. This feels like death coming if you are to make a mistake, that it'll be the worst thing in the world and you can't bear it. And we need to help these kids know that they can.
Okay, another question. What are ways we can recover from setbacks, like attitude issues, in the middle of Zoom class and while we're trying to work from home?
Yeah, like who made this situation? I mean, like, right? Who created this situation? Working at home, and then someone's melting down online somewhere else, right in the house. I think that's it. I think it's like in the moment, we're just trying to get through the moment, and then after the moment, we need to do like these autopsies, like what happened, what triggered you, what is going on, and let's problem solve together to get through it. Right? So if someone's getting really upset and they're getting upset online and it's causing distraction, one thing would be to talk to the teacher about, okay, can they turn the screen off if they're having an emotional reaction while they self-regulate? And it could be the goal is that the goal is to help them take a break and calm down as opposed to stay engaged. Like, I think in these cases, we really need to, there's so much frustration happening for students in virtual learning, as well, particularly students with learning differences, learning disabilities, so frustrating. And they're feeling dumb and they can't follow it. And we just really have to figure out a way of how to get through this, but also then to develop regulation and have a strategy. So again, I think it's collaborating to figure what's going on, and then what's a plan. What can you control? What can you not? And then how can you bring the teacher and the school in to see if there's anything that they could do to be helpful?
And I have one more question related to self-regulation from a parent. What if you know you're showing too much emotion and it's hard to self-regulate when I'm overwhelmed myself?
So first of all, you are not alone. And it's great awareness for you to know that. I think all you can do is what you can do. Meaning, the more aware you are, the more you can try to remove yourself from a situation if possible, and tell your child ahead of time you're really working on managing your big emotions. There's nothing wrong with big emotions. And often families they run in families. So if you have a big emotion person, a parent, there's often a big emotion child. Like, it just often happens that way. And if you're aware of it, you can communicate to them, you're working on it. And so what you're going to do is, if you're having a big emotion, you're going to try to have a timeout. You're also going to try not to yell. And you're telling us in the calm moments. And what you want them to know is that you don't mean to yell and you're working on it. And you're trying to get baby steps. You're trying to get micro steps. You're trying to move the needle a little bit in your own life and model this behavior for your child. And again, it's like, we just have to be kind to yourself because these circumstances are so tough. And if you do have this goal and you do work on it, you can move the needle a little bit.
Okay, the only other question we have, and I just want to tell everybody, because it's 2 minutes to 8, that I posted some resources, some links in the chat to Dr. Dan's website. And he also has an Instagram. You can follow and find his podcasts, parenting podcasts, both those sites. And I posted a link to the Mentis Napa website. We also have a youth resource database now on the Mentis website in English and Spanish that includes all local organizations that work with youth, support, ways for youth to get connected, as well as crisis resources from youth ages 5 through 25. So I will now, in case some of you need to go, ask one more question that came up. Is this presentation applicable for 20 to 22-year-olds? My son struggles with that's it. Sorry. Is this applicable to 20-year-olds? Is there a place to look for material related to young adult age group?
So this is applicable to all humans of all ages. Really, it is, and particularly the young adults. I would say in terms of resources, gosh, I'm thinking about a few books. I'm gonna have to think on that. I just want to say that anything related to these coping skills, mindset. You know what? Carol Dweck's Mindset would be a great book because it really talks about cultivating a growth-oriented mindset. And I would say any book, if there's a lot of anxiety, there's lots of wonderful books out there about anxiety that are written for young adults and increasing resilience. But yeah, this is all applicable. I mean, this is all of us at all ages have to cope, and life dishes us some tough stuff that really challenges us. And if someone is having legitimate anxiety or depression, right, that's also something that really needs some specialized professional help and care. So I just want to say, I mean, that's why we have community organizations like Mentis, right? And that's why we have the Napa SOPA has their school psychologists and their therapists. Like, that it's for having professional support when the problem is exceeding even what we can do as parents.
And I will say that there is, a lot of help available at our schools. And if you're looking for help for your child, you can talk to your school social worker and they can direct you to the best resource at the schools. There's a lot of help that's available at no cost for students. And I think this is a great comment to end on. Somebody just posted, I'm grateful for this Zoom. If anything, it makes me feel like I'm on the right track and we're all doing the best we can. I don't think we hear that enough from other humans.
Awesome.
That's a perfect way to end this. Thank you for that. And thank you, Dr. Dan, for your time tonight.
Thank you all. Take care. Setting my best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, you guys.